Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're doing It Came From The Network. The topic of this It Came From The Network, WWF Superstars, marked on Peacock as Season 11, Episode 40, from October 6th, 1996. And as we go through this, you are going to see there is definitely a reason why I picked this show. I had came across a video about one-time appearances, and I talk about one of the appearances on this show in WWE and characters that only came on TV once. And that got me to thinking, let me look this out because I remember that. So I did look this out. And I'm just going to tell you right now, this may be the most wrestle crap episode of Superstars there's ever been. If you don't remember Superstars, it was a Saturday or Sunday morning TV show, depending on where you lived. I think at this point they had already moved it to USA, and it was a USA show on Sunday mornings. But it was a syndication show that pretty much showed squash matches. This was one of the main shows before Monday Night Raw. So with that being said, we're going to jump into it. If you haven't seen my videos before, I grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. We start off, we're introduced to our commentators, which are going to be Mr. Perfect, Jim Ross, and Brian Pillman. Pillman only stays for the first match and then he leaves, obviously because they're building a feud for this. I kind of forgot that in 96, Perfect was still in WWE because by the end of 96, he's in WCW as Curt Hennig. So it's kind of cool seeing him here. I think him and JR work together well. I think JR works with anybody well, especially at this time. JR was at his absolute peak. He's probably the greatest announcer of all time. From that, we're going to go right into our first match. We get Body Donna Zip going up against Stone Cold Steve Austin very early in the Stone Cold evolution of his character. And this is an interesting match because it's kind of like you're seeing the falls of 95 and 96 WWF or WWE in Zip, and one of the characters that people absolutely didn't care about with the Body Donnas, going up against the guy that's going to turn the company around and make the company as popular as probably it's ever going to be, and that's Stone Cold Steve Austin. This is a good match. Again, these are basically squash matches here. Austin does pick up the win. I'm giving it a 3. After that, we're treated to a video hyping up a future Buried Alive match, who Mankind is in the video with Paul Bearer, and they're at a graveyard kind of digging. It's kind of hard to see this one, but I get what they were getting at. Pretty cool little promo here, building up for that Buried Alive match, which I know we've all seen at some point or another. I think it's In Your House Buried Alive is what the name of the pay-per-view is. So pretty cool little thing here. Then we go into our second actual match. We get Jake the Snake Roberts versus Salvatore Sincere. You're starting to see what I mean by WrestleCap. We got one of the Body Donnas. Now we get Salvatore Sincere here. This was during the Jake the Snake and Jerry Lawler feud, where Lawler was making fun of him for being clean and sober and spitting whiskey at him and stuff of that nature. Lawler does show up in picture here and talks trash about Jake, which is kind of a cool little thing. I wish they did more of that nowadays, especially on matches that have no consequence, where the guy the person's feuding with would come up in the corner and talk a little bit. This wasn't a good match. Jake is not at his best here. Salvatore Sincere, who is a decent wrestler, doesn't do great here either. I'm giving this a 2. It's probably the worst match on the show. Next up, we get another promo promoting the Buried Alive match. This time it's The Undertaker at the grave, which is funny because they probably all three shot it at the same day at the same time. Another cool little thing. I love these little things. Again, something I wish they did more of now. Then we get to see a little preview of what's coming up later in the show with Diesel and Razor Ramon. And this is the fake Diesel and the fake Razor Ramon, so we're full on in the Jim Ross is upset with Vince, so he's bringing back Diesel and Razor. That's a little bit preview of what we're going to see because Diesel's going to be in the main event. Next up is the match that involves the team that made me actually search this out. We have the Grimm Twins, which are the Harris brothers, Skull and 8-Ball, Jacob and Eli Blue, whatever else you want to call them, but you know them mostly as the Harris brothers. And they're going up against the Jinx brothers. And you probably don't know the Jinx brothers, or you may remember this old Wrestle Crap article about them, and there's been other things said about them in the past. But what this is Matt and Jeff Hardy, before they were famous, when they were still just enhancement talent, in jester costumes. Kind of kabuki-esque, bright colored wigs, masks, and everything. And this is the reason why I wanted to go here, because this was apparently the only time they appeared on WWE television. I honestly thought it was more times than this, but from what I've seen, and the video I seen might be wrong. From what I've seen, though, this was their one appearance as that team. Obviously, we know that they would go on to be legends. This was a good big team versus little team match. Ultimately, the Grimm brothers pick up the win. I think they were going to try and do something with them. They didn't do much. They got repackaged and became part of the Disciples of Apocalypse a little bit later, maybe about a year or so later. Overall, I'm giving this one a 3. I thought it was a good match. Not great. That's followed up with a promo with Hunter Hearst Helmsley in full Connecticut Blue Blood mode, and that's pretty awesome. I mean, to see how far he's come from that, it's just amazing. Then we get an in-ring segment with Sunny and Kevin Kelly. She's talking about recently leaving Farouk and potentially managing the Smoking Guns again. She talks more about how she's going to be more of just an appearance person, someone that promotes or does guest appearances or guest commentary, which is kind of what we've seen for the rest of her career there. They do talk about her being the most downloaded person in AOL, which is hilarious. Almost 30 years later, thinking about that, how you had to download pictures of people back then. Then we get a little video package of the feud with Jeff Jarrett and the Road Dogg Jesse James, formerly the Roadie. This was after it was found out that the Roadie was the one singing Be My Baby Tonight or Be With My Baby Tonight, whatever the name of the song is. You know the song. So that was pretty cool. That leads us into our next match, which is Mark Marrow, still kind of in the wild man gimmick, going up against Leif Cassidy, aka Al Snow, Leif Cassidy of the New Rockers. Again, like I said, this is the most Wrestle Crap episode of any show I've ever reviewed. This was probably my favorite match of the show, and by all accounts, a good match. Mark Marrow wasn't a bad wrestler. He was actually really good. And Leif Cassidy, Al Snow, we all know how good of a wrestler Al Snow is. This was a really fun match. Ultimately, Marrow wins with the shooting star press, which at that time for a guy of his size was really, really impressive. He does still have Sable with him at this point. This is before they broke up. There is a picture-in-picture with Farouk, and Farouk is in full blue helmet mode here again. I'll keep going back to it. Most Wrestle Crap episode that I've ever reviewed of any show. This was a really good match. Again, Mark Marrow picked up the win. I'm giving it a 4. Then we get to our main event of the evening. We get Aldo Montoya, you see what I'm getting at, going up against Diesel, aka Glenn Jacobs, aka Kane. We get a little bit of Mark Marrow in the picture-in-picture because they're going to have a match between Mark Marrow and Diesel coming up on Raw. This was a boring match. This was silly. Aldo Montoya would go on to become just incredible and probably one of the silliest gimmicks of all time. Obviously, the more we talk about how goofy the fake Kane and fake Razor Ramon is, the goofier they are. Again, just not a good match at all. This was boring, very slow paced, this is easily my less favorite match of the show. I'm going to give this one a 2. Diesel, or fake Diesel, picks up the win here and leaves us with what we have. And what we have is a show that has some of the people that are going to go on and become big stars in the Attitude Era. Steve Austin, Diesel, although he does so as Kane. Some of the lesser stars like Al Snow, Just Incredible. Just Incredible would become a world champion in ECW. The Hardy Boys here before they were the Hardy Boys, or they were already the Hardy Boys, but before they really got famous. Triple H in his still Connecticut Blue Blood role. Mr. Perfect still being on the show, which I didn't think was happening. This is a very interesting show. Not a good show. Not something I would recommend going to watch unless you just have fond memories of this and the absurdity. Overall, I think the sum of the parts lessens the show. I'm going to give the show overall a 2. It is cool seeing early in his push Austin and a pre-famous Hardy Boys, a pre-Kane Glenn Jacobs. Seeing stuff like that is cool. but not cool enough that I would ever watch this again. Again, like I said, just a pretty much uninspiring show with a lot of the weirdest and worst gimmicks. I believe most of these gimmicks have been covered on WrestleCrap at some point or another. If you're not familiar with WrestleCrap, I don't even know if they still do the show. I don't even know if they still do the website, but what they would do is they would go back and look at bad gimmicks through the history of wrestling and highlight them and write up articles. It was really famous 10 to 15 years ago. It's one of the first real wrestling websites that got famous, and it's one that most people would go to weekly to read their articles and laugh at. There's a lot of stuff on here that made it. The Body Donnas, Sal Sincere probably made it on there. The Jinx Brothers, I'm pretty sure they had an article about them. The New Rockers, I know they had an article about them. I know 100% sure they've had articles about Fake Diesel and Fake Diesel and Fake Razor and Aldo Montoya. So yeah, this is basically everything on the show has some form of WrestleCrap on it. But anyway, I give it a 2. I don't think it was good at all. I wouldn't recommend watching it. If you made it here to the end, let me know something that you think of that's a silly or WrestleCrap worth gimmick, whether it be one of the ones that were shown here, another one that you remember. Maybe it's something you remember fondly, but it's really crap. And there are a lot of those. There's some of those that I personally remembered fondly that were kind of crap. Let me know what you think. Hit me down here in the comments. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching It Came From the Network.